If everybody is ready to get started, let's get started on cloud computing, using cloud computing to bridge the gap between high achievers and low achievers. In this presentation, we're going to first start out with a review of common educational apps which are used at CCBC. Then we're going to look at cloud computing, and then we will see how cloud computing can be used to bridge the gap. We have to be done in 45 minutes, so I'm going to ask that you hold the questions until the end so we can be done on time. So now let's do the review of common educational apps used at CCBC. Simon, the Student Online Information System, Blackboard, and Test Out. Well, I think everybody is familiar what Simon is, the Student Online Information. It allows us to submit our final grades at the end of the semester. This is what's called management, course management. And then Blackboard, I think everybody is familiar with. Blackboard is what we use to deliver online courses or just to supplement face-to-face courses. And the typical format that we're going to see in an online course is for each week, one, the student reads the chapter in the textbook, which is usually available online. And then the student watches the instructional videos which have been made by the instructor or which have been downloaded from YouTube. Then the student performs hands-on exercises, and then the student takes the weekly quiz, which is automatically graded and provides automatic feedback. This is the typical formula for an online course. Read the chapter in the book, watch the instructional videos, perform the hands-on exercises, and take the weekly online quiz. Test out. Whereas Blackboard is used for courses which we have, online courses which we have developed ourselves here at CCBC, Test Out is a company that makes online courses, and these are fully developed online courses. And for example, in this course right here, for each chapter, it includes the components of an online course. It includes a video of the instructor teaching the material. It includes the online text. It allows the students to perform hands-on exercises, and it allows students to do a quiz at the end of the chapter, and the quiz is automatically graded. These are commonly used education applications. Simon is used for grade tracking. Blackboard is used to deliver online courses at CCBC, which have been developed by CCBC faculty, and Test Out is a company that makes fully developed online material specifically for the computer curriculum. Now let's look at cloud computing and see how cloud computing can be used to bridge the gap. Let's start out with a definition of cloud computing. The simplest definition for cloud computing is using the internet for computing. Or to put it another way, the users use either smartphones or laptops or desktop computers to connect to a cloud server, and then the applications run on the cloud server. An example of not cloud computing would be where a user types up a resume and saves it to the hard disk on his or her own local computer. But most of what computing we do these days involves using the cloud to a certain degree. So here are a couple of examples of cloud computing: Google Documents, email, Google Mail, web server, Windows, Azure, and Amazon Web Services. Let's start out with cloud storage. If you were to type up a personal data file such as a resume, you could save it to the hard disk of the computer where you work. The computer where you were at work, for example, but then it wouldn't be available to you at home. So when you got home, so what you might do is you might copy the file to a USB drive and take it with you in your pocket so you could work on the file more at home. Or another thing you could do is from work, you could copy that file up to a cloud server, and then when you got home, you could copy it down to an individual workstation. What do you mean by a cloud server? Well, you just mean a computer which is connected to the internet and which can be accessed from any workstation which can connect to the internet. That's the definition of a cloud server, a server which is connected to the internet. So you could argue these days most servers are cloud servers. Google Documents is a service that allows us to create and save files on a Google server. They call it Google Documents, and they also call it Google Drive. The user can save his files to a cloud server, and Microsoft's version of this is called OneDrive. Another example of cloud applications, which everybody is familiar with, is email. In email, the user, you or I, types up his email and it's sent to the CCBC email server. Then the CCBC email server pushes it to the email server of the recipient, for example, someone at Howard Community College, and then the person at Howard Community College, when he checks his or her email, pulls the file off Howard Community College's email server. So there are two ways to go on the email server. One, you can do what we have here at CCBC. We have our own email server at our own site, and it's in the server room downstairs. We install and we maintain and we provide power and we provide cooling to that email server. Now, if you are a very small company, just 3 or 4 employees, you might not want to install your own email server. It might be a heck of a lot easier just to use a Gmail server. And that way you don't have to install it, you don't have to maintain it, you don't have to provide power and cooling. All you have to do is use the Gmail server. And that is your cloud server. So you can use the cloud to host your email server. Now, I think everybody knows what the World Wide Web is. CCBC has a web page, and most organizations have a web page. And a web page is an electronic document that has text and pictures, and it can be used, one, to simply disseminate information, such as when classes start or what college services are available. This is what they call Web 1. And Web 2 is for e-commerce. That is to say, dissemination of information is a one-way street. Users pull information off of the website just to see, for example, what classes are available. E-commerce allows users to interact with the website, meaning register for classes. The CCBC webpage allows for dissemination of information, allows students to register for classes, and it provides links to online classes in Blackboard, for example. A web page is stored on a web server. What's a web server? Well, it's a computer. And you can have a web server at your site, as we do here at CCBC. And if that is so, then you are responsible to install that web server and to maintain the web server and to provide continuous power to the web server and to provide cooling as well. But if you're a small organization, you might not want to have to maintain your own web server on site. What you could do is use Windows Azure. Windows Azure is when you run your web server on Microsoft's web servers. Windows Azure is Microsoft's, because when you're running your website on Microsoft's computers, and the advantage of it is it's always up and it's always on. And all you have to do is to create the web page, but you don't have to make sure it has power. You don't have to make sure it's updated. You don't have to make sure it has cooling. When you are using Windows Azure, you're storing your website on Microsoft servers. And then another example of this is called GoDaddy. Instead of installing your instead of installing your web server, your website on one of the servers at your own site, you were installing it on the servers of GoDaddy. Now let's take this a step further. Amazon Web Services. You can install anything on Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is a huge data center with a large number of servers where you can install your email server and your web server, or any type of server that you want. And a major trend that we are seeing in the information technology field is for organizations to put all of their servers on Amazon Web Services, to put their file servers there, their web server, their login server, to put their student registration server, and even their payroll server. And thus you no longer have to maintain servers at your site. The servers are all located at somebody else's site. The users only need an internet connection. A major trend that we're seeing in the field is many new startup organizations, instead of having servers on site, put all of their servers on Amazon Web Services, and users only need an internet connection. That removes a need to have servers on site. And this leads us to the issue of public cloud, private cloud. And really the issue here with public cloud or private cloud is, should you run your web server on your own servers or on somebody else's server. Now, a private cloud is where you own the data center and the servers. You install and maintain the servers, you do the backups, you do the upgrades. The advantage of that is you have full control of the system. But the disadvantage is all the labor it takes to install, manage, and maintain servers, to keep them cooled, to give them proper power. Now we have 80 full-time employees here at the Community College of Baltimore County who can do just that, who can run their own data center. Now let's look at a public cloud. Suppose you have a very small organization, like a 3-lawyer's office, and they just don't really have the expertise and the time to maintain their own servers on their own site. What a small company like that would do would be to outsource. Instead of putting their web page on a web server at their own site, they put it on a public cloud such as GoDaddy or Azure or AWS. And that way they're not responsible for the hardware, for the cooling, or for the power, or for the backups. A hybrid cloud is a combination of the two, and that's what we do here at CCBC. We have a hybrid cloud. The private is the part that is run on CCBC data center servers, and that is student grades, employee records, and our own web server. However, Blackboard and Test Out are located on other sites in the public cloud. So CCBC maintains a hybrid cloud with student grades being in the private cloud, or the computers on site, and other things such as Blackboard and Test Out on public clouds. Now let's look at using cloud computing to bridge the gap, and this is also called using cloud computing to bridge the digital divide. Here's the statement of the problem. The statement of the problem is that students must perform assignments, but the students do not have the necessary software installed on their computers, or the students do not have a computer at all. And the solution is to use a VDI, the virtual desktop infrastructure. But before we talk about virtual desktop infrastructure, let's just talk about the difference between a virtualized application and a typical application. Now, a typical application would be, for example, Microsoft Excel. Where does Microsoft where where does it run and where is it installed? In other words, if you go to Microsoft Excel and you add 2 plus 2, the question is, where is that program running? And the answer is obviously, well, on the computer which is right in front of you. How can you tell? Well, because there it is. It's right in front of you. So typically, where does an application run? On the computer, which is right in front of you. That's a typical application. Now, let's look at virtual applications. And most web applications, and many web applications are virtual applications. A virtual application is an application which appears to be running on the local computer but is really running on a remote computer. A virtual application is an application which appears to the user to be running on the local computer, but it's really running on a remote computer. And a commercial example of this is TurboTax. I think everybody knows what TurboTax is. It's a program that allows you to do your taxes. Now, the old way of doing TurboTax was to purchase the CD and to install it on your own individual computer. But the newer way of doing TurboTax is to do it online. The old way of doing TurboTax would be to install TurboTax on your PC. So if you installed TurboTax on your PC at work, would TurboTax then necessarily be installed on your PC at home? Well, no. They're different computers. So you really couldn't easily start your taxes on your computer at work and then immediately do your taxes at home unless you took TurboTax home and installed it there as well. But the new way to do it is not to install it, but to do it online using a virtual application. The new way is to connect to the TurboTax web server and to run the TurboTax program on TurboTax's web server. A virtual application, the user would be running TurboTax on his own he would see TurboTax on the screen of his own computer, but it would be actually running on TurboTax's web server. A virtual application is an application which appears to be running on the local computer, but is really running on a remote computer. And an advantage of this is you can run applications, and the applications do not need to be installed on the user's computer. And these applications are available from any computer that has an internet connection. That's a virtual application. TurboTax is the example. Now, let's look at the virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, at CCBC, where students can perform assignments on virtual machines. Here's the statement of the problem. Statement of the problem is the assignment requires that the students have access to a program called Visio. And the students plan to use the computer. The student doesn't have a computer of his own because a lot of them, they're laptops, they just got cell phones, that's all they have. And so the student plans to use a computer at the Baltimore County Public Library, but that program is not installed on the computers at the Baltimore County Public Library, and they're not going to let you install them. So what we do is we use the virtual desktop infrastructure to connect to a virtual desktop, or I should say a virtual machine, which is running on CCBC servers. In the virtual desktop infrastructure, the user sits at a computer at home or at a public library and then connects to a copy of Windows 7, which is running on a server at the CCBC, and that copy of Windows 7 running on the server at CCBC contains the application that the user needs. So let's do a demo. So for the student to do that, I don't have Visio installed on this computer. So what I'm going to do is go to the Internet Explorer, and I'm going to type HTTP, and I'm going to go to vdi.ccbcmd.edu and type in my username and password and log on. And now I can connect to the VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, desktop. Here's one for my course. And if I click on that, Now what I'm doing is I am connecting my computer to the servers downstairs, which are running a separate copy of Windows 7. And now you can see I am connected. Now, notice there is a separate window here that says Remote Desktop, and it shows several programs installed here. Several programs installed here which are not installed on my local PC. So anything I do within this window that says Remote Desktop, anything that I do is actually going to happen on a computer which is running on a CCBC data center server. See, if I click on this start button right here on the bottom left, then that would be starting programs on the computer where the user is standing, and that doesn't do me any good because that doesn't have the programs I want. However, if I click on this start button, which is in the remote desktop window, then I would be running programs on the copy of Windows 7, which is running on the CCBC data center, and that does have the programs that I need. Now, the fact that you see this remote desktop window, that's how you know that you're connected to a remote desktop. But if you maximize the window here, then the user can't even tell whether or not any programs that he's running are running on the local computer or are running on the remote computer. The only way that the user would know would be across the top here. It says the course name. But if a user were to start any program here, it would be actually running on the remote computer, but the user would know it. The user would think it's running on the local computer. Only if I de-maximize my screen is it clear that any programs that I'm running here are actually running on the remote computer. So if I go to Start and I go to All Programs and I go to Microsoft Office, then I can bring up the program called Visio. And Visio allows students to make organizational charts and to make technical diagrams. And if I close the remote desktop, then that program is no longer available to me. So with the VDI, the user sits at a PC at home or at the library and connects to a copy of Windows, which is running on the server at CCBC, and that copy of Windows contains the applications that the user needs, the applications that the user does not have on his home computer and which is not available at Baltimore County Public Library. So note, CCBC instructors can request that certain software be installed on the VDI. So if there's a particular program that you want your users to have access to at home, then get that, then request technical service, IT technical services to install that program on the VDI, and then your students can use that program from home. Cloud computing provides access to computer resources that would otherwise be unavailable to students. In summary, we did a review of common educational applications such as Simon, which is used for submitting grades, final grades, Blackboard, which is used for delivering online courses which were developed by CCBC faculty, or Test Out, which is fully developed online software. We did an overview of cloud computing. We looked at the email server and we looked at a web server, and we saw that an email server or a web server could be installed at your own site, and you could have the physical server at your own site. Or what many organizations are doing are putting the email server and their web servers, or many servers, up on AWS Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is a great big data center with lots of servers on it, and you can run all of your servers on Amazon Web Servers. A private cloud is when you are running programs on your own data center, and a public cloud is when you're running programs on somebody else's data center, such as Amazon Web Services. And a major trend that we are seeing is a shift toward organizations putting all of their servers on Amazon Web Services, and all their users need is an internet connection. And then we saw that the VDI can be used to allow users access to resources that they otherwise would not have access to. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our presentation, and I would now like to open it up to ask what questions anybody has about anything. And this concludes the presentation. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.